Hey, happy Monday for those of you who are joining us live. Come on in the room for what's going to be a great conversation tonight about an awesome book that I had the opportunity to read. And if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I'm hoping that you will as well. So come on in the room, as Tab Brown would say, come on in the room and join us. And we're going to get started here in a couple of minutes with an awesome conversation with a beautiful sister from Somalia. So as you join us, please let us know where you're joining us from, just so we can have an idea of who's here. And we'll get started here momentarily. For those of you who don't know me or this is your first time coming here, my name is Marcy Thomas. I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective, which has been around for about a dozen years. Celebrating Black women, our beauty, our brilliance, and our boldness. And in the last year and a half or so, we launched the BGC Book Club, which is a place to share books by Black women, whether they're African American women or African women or women who live in London or whatever. We don't discriminate in that regard, but it is going to be Black women from all around the world who have stories to tell. And tonight is no different. So without any delay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about our guest for this evening, who has written The Last Nomad. Shugri Said was born in the desert of Somalia in 1974 and spent her early years living as a nomad. In 1992, she immigrated to North America after Civil War broke out in her home country. She attended nursing school at Pacific Union College and graduated with honors. And although this is her first book, Shugri has been storytelling ever since she learned how to talk. From her grandmother and the nomadic community in which she was raised, she heard stories and learned of their power to entertain, teach, and transform. When she isn't writing or telling stories, she works as an infusion nurse, and she lives in Sonoma County, California, with her husband and 3 children. So without any further delay, let's welcome to the room, Shugri Said Salh. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Mercy, for having me and for all of the people that are joining us. I am truly, truly excited and honored to be here with all of those brown bodies,
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So wow, there's just so much, as we were talking before you came in the room. I really loved your book because there's just so much that speaks to me just as being a Black woman in this world. And just hearing your story and, the trials, the triumphs, everything that you experienced. And I'm just so blessed to have had a chance to read it and to have you here to share with us so that we can all learn and grow and understand that we're more alike and we have more similarities in our stories and our journeys than what we may think.
That is so, so true. I always said we have a lot more similarity, especially as Black women. Our struggle is our way of living life. A lot of us are immigrants. A lot of us are dealing with a generation legacy of being treated badly from starting slave times, right? And then we are getting that. So I am really very excited. And like I told you, I can't wait all of you guys to read this book, and especially really, like I said, Black women, we are more connected than you think, and I am very excited to be part of this show. Yeah.
Yes. So, well, I know that, wow, there's just so much in your story. It's so rich.
I have to say, you're amazing. I mean, the fact that you read it and you listened to audio,
Right. I did both because, it was just important for me to make sure that I was able to get into all of the story and hearing the narration. For those who haven't had a chance to read it yet, it is available on Audible. So you can either, pick up a copy or listen to it on Audible. But it's just great to hear it and just absorb the story in yet a different way. Mm-hmm. So for those who may not be familiar with the story, do you mind just sharing a little piece of it, and then we can get into some of the questions?
Yeah, I have the hard copy of The Last Nomad, like many of you. So I'm gonna see. It's still daylight enough, so who knows? Maybe I don't need glasses.
Right. And I'm going to come, just so you won't be shocked, I'm going to come down so they can look at you. And then when you're finished, I'll come back.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Okay.
Prologue. I'm gonna read the prologue of the last nomad. So prologue. I am the last nomad. How can I be the last when nomads still exist in that faraway desert where I grew up? So how can I make such a bold statement? What I'm really trying to say is I am the last person in my direct line to have once lived like that. And now I feel like the sole keeper of my family stories. As I sit here in my home in California, weaving my tale for you, the weight of that responsibility urges me on. All my ancestors on both sides of my family were nomads. They traveled in the East African desert in search of grazing land for their livestock, the most precious source of all, water. When they exhausted the land and the clouds disappeared from the horizon, their accumulated ancestral knowledge told them where to move next to find greener pastures. They loaded their hats and belonging into their most obedient camels and herded their livestock to a new home. My nomadic family was at the mercy of the weather. At the end of Chilal, the long dry season, when the clouds finally rumble with rain, we look up to the sky with renewed hope. As the desert quenched its thirst, the red earth crackled back to life. Responsibilities ease. Adults welcome the rain with drums and singing and dancing. Children get fat and healthy. Sitting around the fire at night, they soak at the folk tales and poems passed down from generation to generation. But despite the renewed abundance of food, we knew we had to preserve some of it for the dry season to follow. Sometimes the drought hit harder than usual, killing both livestock and people. Bones and twigs soon litter the terrain where goats and sheep once happily grazed. On those times, my ancestors ceased singing under the moon. Their drums hardened, and they longed for good news. Children no longer heard stories by the fire, and an old poet will bellow to the desert, voicing his agony. He would speak of a dying land taking his precious camels. He mourned. His mournful poem would then travel through time across the borders to remedy the pain of his people for years to come. My three children, raised in California, know nothing of the nomadic life except from the stories I have shared. As I sit here now in my comfortable suburban home, listening to my teenager son excitedly tell me about his favorite YouTuber, I'm reminded the acuity of the void between my past and present. I speak of a world in which he has little understanding. An old African proverb says, when an elder dies, a library is born. I'm not yet an elder, but I do feel a portal between two. Sabina stopped that, between two worlds. I am the last person in my immediate family who holds this particular library of knowledge. As the years pass, the sense of urgency I do feel about sharing my experience with my children and the world grows. In my imagination, I have shared my stories with each of you many times as we gather under a clear black sky, its shiny stars guiding my ancestral wisdom. I have imagined you leaning into me as if I had brought the news of water after a drought. I have poured us more tea, for I knew it was going to be a long night under a luminous moon. I want to get this tale of mine right. The fire between us has crackled with excitement, as if to nudge my story along. But it's no longer enough for me to just imagine telling you my story. I feel the need to bring you all by the fire and into my world.
Thank you so much for sharing. That just gives us an idea.
Yeah, thank you. I can see my daughter making a note, so I have to continue, but say, it started.
Yeah,
That's every mother is saying, I'm gonna focus. So don't make me come there.
Well, thank you so much for just giving us some insight into, what the story is really about. It's about this nomadic lifestyle that you started out living that, many people may think of that as something that was centuries ago or years ago, but to understand that you were born in 1974, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not. I wasn't born in another century. Although I tell people, I was born in 1900. But the thing is, you're right, and this happened because actually I am a daughter of an educated father and a nomadic mother, and so. Sabina, can I ask you to take this to the other room if you're going to do that? I can hear every drop you're doing, Hoy. Thank you. I love you, but you have to stop. So I come from a different kind of cultures, where my parents, right? So, and my mom was really this young desert teenager girl. He married her and took her to the city, but she was adamant, sacrificing one of her daughter to that world. And it wasn't going to be a son. It was going to be a daughter. You have to look at the whole picture of a culture that discriminates, that practices female circumcision, that give each of the virgin daughters to create alliance. It's a whole new world. And here I was born my mother's and father's fourth daughter, tipping the scale in her favor. And she was like, you know what, I'm taking this one. She pulled me out of, I finished first grade, but she pulled me after school finished and dropped me in the desert. That's why the scene of the first chapter started me running with some kind of a wild animal that I had messed up with, and yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's just something. I mean, there's so much in that. The fact that your mom saw something in you that made her, you had sisters that were older, that she could have chosen one of them to be a nomad and to work with your grandmother and to help her. And
they would have been more helpful, I would think. They would have been more helpful than me. I'm so young, but perhaps she was thinking, like you said, grooming me for the role, perhaps.
Grooming you for the role. So basically, tell us a little bit about what it meant, for you specifically as a nomad. What exactly did that mean?
Well, there's two parts to that question. From when it meant, before we even get to the desert, that I was going to grow up separately from the rest of my sibling. I wasn't going to grow up under the leadership or the parenting role of my parent. I was going to be the daughter, in a way, of my grandmother. And no education, no parent, no sibling. So in a way, that really left me I remember my brother saying, he had this dream of me one day arriving as a bewildered teenager nomadic girl who could not relate to them because I grew up so different. I mean, this is the people who chase grazing land, droughts, and it rains and water. It's a whole different world. And you can see when I was vacillating between the city and the nomad. The city, the responsibility would ease, and then I would go back to the nomadic life, and I will go into the rhythm of a totally different life. So for me, honestly, it meant that my grandmother was going to raise me. I was going to grow up this very well-knit nomadic family who every 4 months was in search of a new grazing land and water hole, and everything they own must fit into a camel. Can you do that?
No.
This house, and I go, oh my God, we're gonna need all the camels of the desert to take this house somewhere.
Right.
We better break the camel's back because So it is really, it is what it is. You just that was the world. And then when I come of age, I would have married a nomadic man who, if I don't birth him sons, will take 4 other women, and and. It's really, who knows? I probably be missing teeth and hush lives. Who knows? I probably wouldn't be a nurse here. And so it is kind of, in a way, sometimes I have this moment, I go, what would I be doing today? Had that life worked out? Maybe, chasing my nomadic, no good husband man, or... but with a machete because he didn't behave or whatever.
Right. Well, one thing, and you've kind of touched on it, that, even though you come from a family where, your mother, even though she was a young nomadic girl who married an educated man who took her, to the city. There were things that she did because I thought of, well, in the Bible, it talks about the Proverbs 31 woman, where she was like this woman, she had her own business and she was doing all of these things, even though she was under what many people would say, a very paternalistic, very male dominated society, but yet she still did some things for herself, even as a young woman. So she was setting you up to be a more independent type of woman anyway.
Yeah, and that is true. But isn't that, Mercy, the story of every Black woman, right? We are hardwired for survival through ancestors and through all the life. So sometimes I say, don't think it's everything die in vain. Trust me, had I not been hardwired, I would have been straight jacket this time, right? With all the things, Black women underestimate the power they have, right? We really go through a lot of harshness and craziness. And I've seen single African-American mom really come through the impossible and raise some of the most amazing children. So I think really we are, and my mother was no different, right? She was the daughter of the desert, under this adaptability was her key. So when she came to the city, actually she was the breadwinner of our family. She was the one. She was such a smart woman that she was quickly learning how to add and subtract. And if I may say, my father did not teach her.
Okay.
She had to quickly learn this thing, and she'll sell some goats and go back and find out the need of the nomad, and she'll make a temporary shelter or a place where she can take up in a little shop, so the nomads doesn't have to make that weekly trip all the way to the city. They can go to her. So she was our early entrepreneur, right? Trying to work together. And, she was really amazing woman. And there was a story of her being 9 months pregnant and walking into a enclosure full of feasting hyenas, and survive. They could obviously nothing happened, but you can imagine this woman, tracking the desert pregnant, no compass, right? Have to worry about man who want to rape her. She could have give birth over there, and if the animals smell your blood, they will come down, like, and the people that looking even back, I go, they had no fear.
Right. Yeah, that was evident throughout the book.
Yeah.
That there was no fear, or even if there was, they learned how to.
They learned to tame it.
They learned to tame it. They learned to move with courage, even in spite of those moments of fear. They may have been inherent. You're afraid, and I mean,
you have to move with that courage. And honestly, these are the women who were going through female circumcision, and to be a woman in that time, it meant that the bulk of the work was falling onto this woman. They have to build their own hut. They have to do they have to look up the herding, right, of the goats or the cows and all that. And in my grandmother's case, and usually she used to tame camels, and she used to look after the camels. And camels, as you remember reading this, Joy Mercy, they are unusual. Camels are, leaf eaters and big tall trees. So what happened is, usually to be a camel herder means you are out and about for 3-4 months, not even with families. Okay. The shortest usually the camel herders will come back is every 3 weeks. So sometimes, when it's a rainy times, they may stay close by, but majority of the time they are alone. And she was fighting with lions, the hyenas, which is a wild dog, all of this, and she was a poet. So at that time she was a well-known, and whoever she didn't like or she encountered, she was creating this intricate, very cerebral poem. And she could be insulting you while you're sitting right there, and you may not know. You're like, keep drinking your tea for me, my dear.
Right. And now that I found amazing, because that just speaks to how multifaceted she was as a woman. Because yes, she's doing these things, and like in the book you mentioned that many times it was men who were handling the camels more so than the women anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then she was also this poet who could, as people would say, she would read you.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell
yeah.
you.
Oh, I even learned recently more an interesting fact about my grandmother, that when the poem that would make her famous, she uttered, or meaning this is an oral tradition, no one is writing down things.
Right.
You actually, it's like a rap, right? When a young guy in a poetry jam or poetry rap jam or whatever, where they gather together, everybody's just saying their thing. That was their generation. Youngsters will gather and diss each other, and you create right there. And
Okay.
then this nation of oral traditions will commit to memory, because there's something about being an oral tradition. They have a vastly open memory that is just ready to absorb, and they will just carry out that poems to generation. So I actually learned the first time my grandmother uttered that poem, she was only 12, and she sneaked out with the big girls after she became indignant. She snuck
Okay.
out with the big girls after she became indignant, because the girls in her tribe lost the poetry
Mm.
exam, and she said, we ain't gonna do that. So she went hiding from her mom and dad, and
Wow.
she started composing this poem, telling, because she's about to pick up a clan of her mother, but she's gonna pick up a sub clan of her mother.
Okay.
Meaning, she told her mother, and my reapti is a people of your mother's family. Step down, I'm about to step on somebody's toe, but I love you. But let me pick on this little sub clan of yours. I gotta discipline. Give me a minute, God. Don't curse me yet. I gotta define, and that actually went viral in a nomadic life style.
Wow.
It's not the computer, but more like man and women herding. Have you heard of that? Have you, as they herd their goats and camels, and two youngsters who perhaps interested each other's look or whatever, could impress with each other this poem. So she really was amazing, and I think she still was amazing. And I may say, my grandmother passed away in her 90s, is still everything functioning. I tell people, go to the desert, something about walking around, using your mind constantly,
Right.
preventing all of these problems we encounter as city people. Her memory was spectacular till the end.
Right. And I mean, that just makes a lot of sense, because, and she had to be in good shape, because, you're always
Oh,
moving,
she was
you have to be on point and paying attention to
alert,
what's going on
right?
around you,
Alert.
have to be focused. I mean, it's just so many things in that would have passed down, or, that you were able to learn and glean from. Now, of course, you spent a lot of time in the desert, and then, of course, being in Somalia, there were things that happened in terms of, just in terms of civil war and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So there were times where you, basically weren't with her as much, and you wound up going and being with your family. I know, but there was still a lot of moving around and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the trajectory of my life changed, right? Obviously, it changed initially. The second time, when with the death of my mother, my grandmother
Right.
had her second thought about a lot of things. But also, yes, I did also grow up in the city, as you read in the book, and had go through the Somali civil war. So actually, uh, in that political unrest time, where Somalia was very agitated in the brim of civil war, right? That is when my father said, "Oh, I'm going to take you to my home city of Calcayo," and he took all of us. Perhaps he felt we need to get to know him, and as you see, men were raping young girls. And I think at that time, I probably was 14 or 15.
Okay.
My older sister was maybe may have been 15 or 16, depending on, we're not a nation who mark dates by birthday. No one celebrates birthdays
Right.
much.
Right.
In fact, everybody's born in January. If you see African,
Mm.
there's always a joke, an African joke. Yeah, your birthday. We're all celebrating. But anyways, so we end up going with him, and the city become unsafe, and he just pushed us into the nomad life. And
Right.
obviously, I knew what to do, as egotistic I was about it that time. But then the war happened, and all that, it's becomes a war of men were in conflict and killing each other, but woman was way to damage you, was rape you and impregnate you with the child from opposite clan, and which mother can kill her kid? No, and that is the ultimate revenge for those time, right? And do you remember, I almost get raped. We were stranded in the borders of Kenya. Imagine thinking that no borders existed in Africa, and then
Right.
arriving at the borders of Kenya, and running away from not only from war, but
Right.
lions, hyenas, angry baboons. My people are drowning, as I told my best friends, are drowning in the ocean, and all the suffering among in my people. And then people looking at us like all the Somali young women who are, beautiful women are arriving with compassless, let's just do whatever. And I even end up, I was an illegal immigrant in Kenya, and Kenyan soldiers were at that time, um, we become a money making machine because we had so many families abroad, and then they'll put you to jail and you have to pay your way out. Anytime a poor soldier who wasn't getting paid his proper salary from the government, now you have to understand that is a survival for everybody, right?
Right.
Some did it too much, and cruelness was involved because they waited until the person was about to leave the country to catch you, and they'll put you about to fly. So everybody, in fact, my other books, I will add these stories, right? Where if you knew you were gonna fly tomorrow, within the next week, you stayed, like the pandemics, you stayed home. You don't, because you knew if they snatch you right at that moment, either you paid thousands and thousands, or you miss your flight.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then its opportunity doesn't happen again. You miss, they change the trajectory of whole your life. So it was really really crazy. I met a man recently, Merce. I don't know if you have a time, but people started reaching out to me. One of the men who reached out to me is named Tom. Was a Peace Corps, worked in the Peace Corps in Somalia. Actually, they were sending that African Americans were coming as a Peace Corps,
Okay.
and whites were coming. So all of these people, America had its diversity then, so all of these people were coming, and he was telling me how, like he was nostalgic for Somalia as well, and it was just all of that. Him and I have a talk yesterday. I had a breakfast with him, and I didn't have a fear. My girlfriend was like, Shukri, are you just going to go to this guy's? I said, I don't know, something about talking to him and knowing he's been home. And I do want to talk to him. And it turned out to be a wonderful man who have so much insight to my country, and was telling me an era that I wasn't in 1960s, what was happening. And it was really, really beautiful to get his view of Somalia as well, and someone who have a positive outlook of Somalia. And he said, so he told me, Marcy, he said, everyone who read this book said they have never read a book that is really capture the Somali culture, the side to that word. Even when you, Shukri, talk about as hard thing as female circumcision,
Yes.
you didn't play a victim, more like you took the time to show us the insight to that world. And
Right.
all of those people who've been to Somalia, who had all this, are saying this is the book about Somalia. And I think I stay away from clan thing too. So it really is not faxing anybody, it's not bothering. It is very respectful. And the honesty of it, despite giving you the insight of female circumcision, but I also did not hide the brutality of it. So here I am, I said, we're all lined up like an animal heading to the slaughterhouse, right? One by one. But I think one of the hardest thing for people to see, and sometimes when people are interviewing me, especially some males, they have a hard time wrapping that. But did you forgive them? But are you angry? And I often say, my goodness, my grandmother was the woman of her time.
Right.
I am angry, and you may be hard to learn that was not even the hardest chapter to write. And had I not gone through what I did, no one would have married me. I would have had an inferior girl. I would have been insulted. it is what it was like. So this is why I wrote, this liberal woman who's living in California, wrote this for you so you can understand what it's like to be. And perhaps when you understand the insight to our world, maybe you can help better.
Absolutely, because I was talking to my mom about your book earlier today, and I was telling her that in the book you talk about, female circumcision, which those of us who are, born and raised in America, we know about it from hearing about it. People talk about it, but just to actually read and listen to that part of your story and to understand it, like you said, to be angry or whatever, that's a part of the culture. And what else? You didn't know what the future was going to hold. You didn't know what was coming down the pipe. So you're pretty much going along with what would have been your life.
It's almost like a child who had cancer. What are you going to do? Maybe there is a better medication that's going to come out one day later.
Right, but you don't know. You don't know at that time.
Yeah, you don't know better. And I think you really understand the insight, exactly what I was getting into it. I wasn't agreeing with it.
Right.
I am absolutely, as you see, in the end, I said, I am unshackling this end with me. I know better than my grandmother. If I do to my daughter, despite growing up this country, that is wrong, right? I know better. When you know better, you do better. Wasn't it Maya Angelou who said that? Right. And I think people forget that. And I'm saying, because it almost my complete honesty and giving you the insight come out as a form of arrogance to some people. But it is not that. I had everybody, all the women who were writing were the victim to the situation.
Right.
People, what you really know is what are driving. How did this come about? Why are these people doing this to their daughters? Why are they doing this barbaric act? Let me tell you, this is what it is. I remember I heard a story of one sub clan in the desert who don't circumcise their daughter. And one of my uncle, actually, I heard marry one of her daughter. He find out when they were getting intimate, he find out some of the things are disgusting. He find out that she wasn't circumcised. He just gave the girl back.
Wow.
It was like, I don't know what's going on. And at that time, no one would say, whoa, wait a minute. How could the conversation, you can't have that conversation. You are in that world as well. That is your reality.
Right.
So, and the family had to perhaps maybe look for somebody else. But that whole sub-clan, as a result of it, really suffered. And you know what? Another thing I want to debunk, which my next book, I'm writing a bunch of other project I'm involved, and I like to finish one at a time. But really what I really want to do is again, just because we went through female circumcision, we are not the done women. Meaning we don't have feeling. That's another misconception.
Okay.
The woman who got me going, let me say Mercy, who said, I said, girl, are you talking to me? Are you for sure? I have to say, I get this thing going. She told me, Shugri, she said, I have a better feeling than some of my white friends. In fact, she picked a woman and she said, my friend Sarah, I have a better feeling. I'm better in bed. I'm better feeling. I said, hey, did they circumcise you? I said, yeah. The Somali way? She said, yeah. I said, girl, we got to sit down. So and what she told me, it's a multi-layer thing that I said, now it's going to be a 5-woman story. Some of them are married, like I said, white, African-American. There's a woman who are married all Arab. Some of them are circumcised. Some of them, her sisters are circumcised, but she didn't. So there's so much stigma. Some of them are shaming their daughters who wasn't circumcised because they couldn't touch them in this country. So they have to control them more because all of a sudden they're not sealed, the clitoris is not cut. All of those things they once rely on trying to help them is no longer working for them. So I am actually being a nurse and knowing that we are not all dead, and just because we're not good in bed and we're done, don't paint us. Especially brown women should not paint us. They should understand that we do have something still living. Some people don't have feeling to begin with, right? We know.
Right.
That doesn't have to be. I'm Mercy. But I'm telling you, some people, that is the way nature had it for them from the beginning. They don't have feeling. And there's nothing. I'm not shaming anybody, my dear. All power to you, wherever your life takes. But I'm saying, as a Somali woman, it is easy to paint at. We are a woman who've been through so much atrocity, where their culture is barbaric. They're the pyro, they're the extremists. There's easily to paint us. But brown women should pause before they paint us, right?
Right.
What am I doing? Am I doing what was done to me to this woman?
Right. Right. And that's something that's so wow. I mean, there were so many things. Just, I mean, yes, the female circumcision piece, but even just the whole thing of like, okay, you know, that if you're going to marry someone, you have to be a virgin, but it's up to you to protect your own virginity. It's like other people aren't going to do that for you. And then if somebody, like you mentioned, people trying to rape you, if somebody tries to rape you, it's your fault. And I'm like, well, golly, some of these things, as I was reading, it's kind of like what we deal with. If something happens to you as a woman, even here, it's your fault. Well, why were you wearing that? Well, why were you doing that? Well, why were you in that space? So I'm like, oh my God.
Mercy, you are a woman of very insightful. I am enjoying this conversation. Oh, you got this thing. You got it by the rain. You're leading this camel very well. No lions are gonna get you, girl. You know what you're doing. Mercy, it is so true. Like I said, it starts with that 2-year-old who's sitting by the fire, who flashes her rifle, and somebody's launching stick, anything, lit fire sparks, anything at it. And so from the get-go, you learn like, oh my God, there's something inherently wrong. And believe it or not, even as an adult woman, I have to, disentangle from that layers of, my goodness, what is it damage? What is psychological? Where is my feeling? It really caused me a lot of confusion. So I am so glad that people are understanding. You know, the story of the man who tried to rape me that time, he was like, didn't care. And of course, the mistake I made was thinking this older woman this was Somali Kenya. If she said, this guy have been trying to get your attention for a long time, I thought, okay, this stepson or whatever he was step grandson or something. I have to read back the book, but there was a relationship he had. I think in the book I took my time and clarify for clarification. But this guy was nephew of the number 2 guy in Kenya that time. The president and the guy who protects him happened to be a Somali guy so these people were, he didn't care if he raped me that day. And I fought back, but had he won, I would have to kill myself, because there's no way I would have gone back to those brothers and said I've been raped. You remember when I was also dating the Ethiopian guy, which a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of stories about Ethiopian guy and a crash to Will Smith that he doesn't even know.
Right.
But had that happened too, this guy, I'm here falling in love with this Ethiopian man who, you can't, first of all, the boy is Christian to them, and then he's a different clan, and whose clan is he? We can't trace his forefathers. Let him not enter us, and it really was crazy. I recently learned something, Mercy, that was very interesting. The guy who tried to rape me, after 4 months ago, I was going through a tragic time. I lost my brother, Guled.
Sorry.
And I really, thank you, sweetie, I succumbed to it. I was a sister who went every hole with him. I couldn't give up my lovely brother. It was so hard. And in the end, he lost his life. But there was a Somali guy who was from that area that I almost get raped, Garissa from. And I don't think the guy knows me. And we were getting into conversation. I remember you guys. You said you were a teenagers and you were like living in these stocker rooms, and we had charcoal on that, and we were like always fanning the fire because you have to use an actual charcoal. People don't complain when you have to turn on the damn stove, okay?
Right.
Just no idea what we were doing. We were washing things clothes by hand, and he said to me, he brought the boy who raped me. He said, I know Idris is, Idris, I knew wasn't going to have a problem. Idris was going to be rewarded. He had raped or continue to rape women, right? But no one is gonna stop him. And he said Idris is a pilot today.
Wow.
And imagine I had, so, sometimes when someone does us something wrong, even if we're not traumatized, we formulate, I don't know if everybody does. I know that I'm having a conversation, what I would do if I ever see him. Or
Ooh,
should
yeah.
I walk to him? I go to my Somali scarf and said, hey, and go to that boy and say, do you know me? Really, I may do that, or I may board his plane and he may say, you look familiar. Who are you? And I'm going to say, I am the woman, a girl you try to rape. Not even gonna. I'm not hurt. I thought that fish is high enough back. He didn't rape me that day.
Right.
I do want to tell him. I wanted him to meet this strong woman who's grounded, who found her world. I wanted to meet with him and say, you little bastard, you're not going to get away with. I'm going to tell him. So I don't know. Part of me wants to say that to him. And maybe that is my way of my body having the ultimate closure,
Right.
Often when something bothers me, I journal too. So who knows? But it's not my story only, Mercy. I'm
Right.
telling you, even you, I'm sure, Mercy, a man have crossed line with you. It
Yeah.
is so common, right? Every woman I met, every brown, black, white woman, every woman from all walks of life. Look at what was happening in Hollywood when Hollywood come undone because of all of the men directors who were squeezing women's privates and getting away with it. And they know that it takes us hard work to get to where we're going. And imagine you get the role you were looking for, like Lupita Nyong'o did, and this man wants to abuse you along the way because he knows you're desperate.
Right.
You're gonna succumb to whatever he's trying to do because you're like, I'm just trying to get to where I'm going. And so survival kicks in, and they take advantage of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But one thing I love about you, not just the story in general, but you specifically, is that, okay, you've gone through, had all these experiences, and you end up in Nairobi in Kenya, and you're kind of starting to see life a little bit differently and
Checking the boys out, yes.
having different opportunities. It's like the things that were happening to you, they were a part of your story, but those things have not defined you as a woman.
Yes,
It's just a part of the journey. It's a part of the story, but you still are Shugri, and
Yes, you're absolutely right.
There are parts of the story where you're feisty, where you're pulling tricks on people. I mean, you're just doing all kinds of things. I mean, you are still, none of those things have kept you from being the woman that you're supposed to be, and in many ways bucking against the tradition to say, because I think it's that, a woman had to be in a familial home or live with family until they get married. But you're like, no, I don't want to do that. I see these other girls are living free and having fun and enjoying life, and they're not under the thumb of some man telling them what to do and how to do. And you did some things and made some changes to allow that to happen for yourself. So I really love that.
Oh, thank you so much, Mercy. I love a lot about you as well. Meeting you, you're just an amazing person. And I'm really, truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, enjoying this conversation that we're having. I feel like you can relate to. I don't have to explain a lot. You're a woman, you understand. You're a Black woman, you understand all of the things that I'm talking about. And, at the same time, Mercy, you are right. If you become that sad darkness, everything they want to do to you, right? And you carry that energy, you become that, right? And so we have to never stop to our inner light, laughter, having fun, and seeking, that once you are not under that acute distress, right? Seeking women for support, join hikers group, join social clubs, meeting people who are like us. Also, you being a kind and helping. I remember as a young mom, we were a lot of women who collect each other, who watch each other's children. No one asked if this year I help a mom, perhaps next year when I need she helps, I will cook for their children, feed them, and then they will do the same thing for me. No one was saying, asking for each other money, because
Right.
we have to do that. So honestly, I didn't want to. There's a lot of humor in it, and that is because I am actually funny sometimes when no one's.
Yes.
Yeah, I am really funny. So it's like I didn't want to kill that part that makes me get along with all that and see. And I'm immensely curious. Like when I look at everybody, I was telling somebody, I want to go to African American church and I want to hear the lovely singing everybody talk about like this thing. I listen to actually old songs, African, even songs about slavery. It's something about the way they bellow that time from their innate sadness that that identifies that
Right.
I can relate. And there is a book that I read, The Water Dance, and like tell me that African American.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Thank you. I listen to The Water Dance. I think it's if I am. I love this kind of thing. And then the author Homegoing, I listen to her story. It's something about that world during the slavery and people fighting. Because you see now it's hard to see, but that time every little fight African women or African people took, is what gives us today. It was bigger, first of all, right? Because if you couldn't do one thing and then somebody fight and did it right, then somebody else took it from when they left and continue. And all of the women who were creating all of this railroad passing and people going to Canada, all that. So I find all of this beautiful and amazing. And the same thing, the story of homegoing, collecting this generational story, starting this slave that took the ship and the slave that stayed behind, and how the life diverged. So I don't know what everybody does. For me, I'm really grateful for all of the African Americans that went through what they did, because I always tell all of my African friends, you are standing on the blood and the sweat of our fellow sisters and brothers.
Absolutely.
Do not forget that. When people get iffy and I said, you are not telling me anything. I am not letting you get away. So I'm one of those people that really remind that collective consciousness of I am standing on the shoulders of my grandmother, right?
Absolutely.
And mom, right? I would not be the woman I am had they not gone through what they did, had they not created or fight. So yeah, and I am very aware of all of this. What do you call? Privilege that provided to me because of the shoulder of all of that African American that took the whipping and all of the hardship for us. So I'm really very grateful, and I'm really honored that many people will read this story and get it to share it with your friend. The story is very interesting because I know all my friends, even the ones who knew I was working on the book, they go, Shugri, I need to go out with you. We need to talk. Like,
right.
What did you do, Shugri? And I'm like, nothing. I just wrote a book. No, Shugri. I know you talked about you were writing a book, but this, I couldn't put it down. Even I was like, let me just read a couple of pages. And I'm like, boom. And that has been across everywhere. And I am so humbled by it that people that I've never met are getting this book everywhere.
Absolutely. And
That is how I end up with you as well.
Yes. And it's just such a powerful story, and I love it because there are the things that are connecting us. There are the things that we go through that are similar, because I'm just thinking whether it's learning about recipes or just whatever it is, these things, passing the things down and all of that it's still we're part of the diaspora, so it applies to all of us,
It
There are
does. It
the
really
little bits
does.
and
Yeah.
pieces might be different, but overall, our stories are, are very, there are similarities in all of our stories.
And there is a power in our diversity. Really.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you mentioned spending time in Kenya. I've never been to Africa before, but next year I'm actually going to Kenya on my first trip to Africa. So
This is one thing I tell all my African American. Unless you go home, you won't have the closure you're seeking.
right,
Don't die without visiting home. Really,
right,
like even I want to go back. Somalia is crazy, right? And I feel like I have to go because Somalia and I owe each other closure, right? Like a
right,
bird
right.
whose nest is burned down. I just flew in terror. I need to go back and have closure. So do Kenya.
Yes, I'm going to
I may
Kenya.
even go to those Kenyan soldiers and said, when they try to say, let the kibanda, which is handing me your ID, I may have to give them my American passport.
Right.
And dance around them and dance around them. I said, ha ha, you can do nothing to me.
Right, absolutely. And earlier this year, I found out I did African ancestry and found out that my maternal lineage is from Sierra Leone. So that's another place that I want to go one day.
You and I may be related too, because my sister married a Sierra Leone husband. So I am an auntie to a Sierra Leone niece of mine. So,
Wow.
You see how we are connected? Now I have to come for a tea.
There's a connection.
We're not coming. Give me the address. Where is the address? Come on. Give it to me.
So yes, I mean, I just feel that it's important. And, over the years, we hear a lot of things about, diversion between Africans who may grow up in Africa versus Africans who may have lived in London versus Africans that, have come to America, or even, in South America. There are so many ways that people try to divide us, but like May is saying, we are all connected. There is a connection somewhere. There is something that we meet each other.
Goodness. Yes, we are all connected.
Absolutely.
People used to say even trees. Tree. As in inanimate object. This is my tongue twist. Inanimate object. Trees. Even trees. They find out. Scientists are discovering how in their roots they communicate. Warn each other a toxic environment. Warn each other fire, diseases, closing each other. So of course we are more connected than ever, and I really believe that it's really strongly. I always see that in people. I always see the connection I have with people. Really, like a lot of people tell me. So I have a Facebook which I'm connected to my Somali people. My Somali people are tough. Oh my goodness. They will insult the hell out of you, and they will love the hell out of you. So you better get ready. That manic, in Somali culture, if your nose is crooked, there they said the one with the crooked nose. If your eyes is facing the one, I'm like, oh my God, you have to own your imperfection. Like you wear it like a gold chain, bling blink, so I often. People say, leave the Somalis around, they're not buying your books anyways, and they're going to drive you. But I am of these people. I can't leave them
alone.
I can't leave them, and they can't leave. So I take the insult and I go back to them, and other people give me compliment and take that compliment. And when I'm ready, I go back to the Somalis. What's happening, people, today? And then the insult start, or the compliment start. But I'm trying to teach them, even the Somalis. Yes, some of us cover our head, some of us don't. Some of us wear a ring in our nose, some of us don't. Some of us wear a modern clothes, some of us don't. I mean, some of us dress up modest, some of us don't. I'm saying there is a diversity within us. Except,
yes.
I am the woman who marries someone from a different country. My husband is Ethiopian. I fall in love with Ethiopian. And you see, there was a Sudanese guy who broke my heart after the other one kicked me out. Remember the one?
Yes.
Like, oh, couldn't you just leave the boy? I had him, but another woman have to say, I'm having that boy. Did I fight you guys?
But I'm sure that you got the better prize in the.
I am telling you, but that it showed my cluelessness. And when the girl took me down, she was like, "I'm having this boy," and he, like in the story, he was chasing her for 3 years. and she refused. And the minute we start dating, she had to have him.
You
And she
hey,
did
she was
me
a
a
hater.
favor though. Mercy, she did me a favor. I end up with my handsome prince who come in a skinny East African body, but bloomed into his handsomeness.
But that's all that matters. And you all were able to, well, you met in Canada, right?
We
You did,
met in Canada. He wasn't on a camel like I tease.
right? So you met in Canada, and
Yeah.
then now you all are here in California, and you have your family, and just living this great life. And well, before we get ready to go, I do want to ask you a little bit, because we talked about it before we came on, that you work as an infusion nurse. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that, because I did not know what an infusion nurse was, and how does that kind of relate to some of the things that you did earlier in your life?
First of all, infusion nurse are a subcategory of RN nursing, right? So we are the people who start the IVs. But for me, what I explain to people is I take hospital to home. So literally I carry my pump, I'm putting medications in, and I'm calculating medication in that pump. I'm starting IV, or I'm accessing their port with this sterile, or changing their PIC line, drawing blood. And we also, because we're taking hospital to home, sometimes we are reconstituting men. So we are kind of an unusual group of nurses. And I actually wanted to do that because I remember the first time I started an IV, my instructor turned to me and she goes, "Have you started IVs before?" She goes like, "You got this." It was a natural thing. And I tease people, a lot of times people would say, "Well, you're not going to get it." I'm walking into houses, like I said, these are people who are all walks of life, right?
Right.
And I'm doing this thing at the height of Trumpism, right? Where the whole country was agitated, or whatever diseases we had just come out of its dormanted stage, right? We were like boiling, and and as a Somali woman, as a Muslim woman, as all of these things working against it. And I will go and often, people will look at you and they go, "You are going to start my difficult IVs and no one can start it." But actually, I would have to tell them, I am called in for difficult IVs. So I have to calm them down and say, "We got this." I love starting difficult IVs. I love making a human being who was so stressed out about, and, giving them that care. Another thing is that I do, and I tell, a lot of what I do is I'm giving drugs that are agitating people's immunity, whether it's IVIG or Remicade, TB, or a person have immune disorders, or Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, MS, all of these diseases. We are treating these people who are from poor to rich in their homes, and every 8 weeks or every 2 weeks, whatever it is. And no one even know. You guys don't even know how many CEOs or rich people we treated them in their home. But I love doing that, and often I am starting their IV, and I'm talking about my nomadic world. And sometimes some people will get suspicious and say, "Where did you get your education? You haven't studied medicine. Where did you get it?" While I was looking after my goat, I practice on the elephant, but you might get we can do it, guys. So you have to have mercy. You have to have sense of humor.
Absolutely.
You can't get rattled up. And I'm always changing their mind. They go, "I don't know about the Somalis, but now I think you guys are not bad. You're not bad. You're cool." I'm like, perhaps we are normal.
Right. And I love it. And I just think of just looking at, when we're getting ready to wrap up here, because getting close to time, but I just love the trajectory of your life, because it just seems like your whole life you were born to be this person who would be able to deal with a lot of things that maybe others couldn't, and be able to be a survivor and to help others. And now you are still continuing to do that by telling your story, and even the work that you do, you are helping others to be survivors.
It is so true. And if I may add, Mercy,
powerful.
And if I may add, Mercy, to be a Somali person, if I make it, means money didn't. So,
Right.
like I said, my father had 23 children. Those children are even having children. So, and if you see a Somali, if let's say, for example, I made a money of random thing, let's say I made a $500 a week. I'm just guessing, honestly. 200 has, $500 a month. 250 has to go to my family. Or
Right.
you have no idea how many. I don't want to disrespect anybody, but like amount of money, like like this week I was talking to about a relative of mine I want to help, and then my niece is her teeth having a teeth health issues, and they said her teeth you cannot even take one out without. I'm like, it's gonna cost a lot of money, so
Right.
5,000 isn't gonna cut it. And then so I have to think, okay, I know the book may give birth to something, but I gotta take care of an emptying accounts. And honestly, it's Somali woman did very well coming to this country, I may say, because like every woman, every Black woman, life is hard for us growing up, but it actually prepared us.
Right.
And
Right.
so we did better than the boys. In fact, even the Somali culture celebrate the birth of the boy. In the end, every woman who had daughter thrived, and the one who have son, well, unless he got his shit together, I don't know what happened.
Well, okay. That's America too. Not just Somalia.
Isn't that the story of African American thing? It's like, honestly, all of the things that trauma gives you. Now we have all these youngsters, Somali men, full in prison as well too, because you African American were dealing that transnational legacy of slavery, and we have to deal with friggin' trauma and then come to racism. So there are a lot of Somali men who are in Minnesota prison. It breaks my heart. These are the sons of ours you were expecting to do, but again, trauma doesn't spare, and Somali women are again carrying the reign of everybody, and just like many of you African American women and brown women, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Paula, I'm going to put up Paula's comment, and then we're going to get ready to close it out. Paula is someone who comes a lot to hear the books about the book. So just thank you, Mercy and Shugri, for a very interesting book discussion. I really enjoyed being a part of this evening, and she's looking forward to reading the book. And reading and listening. Yes, reading and listening, because both are good, because the narrator does a really good job. So you will enjoy it. And she has an accent as well, so it feels.
That the company was really I am want people to hear, so trust me.
Yes. So it feels authentic because she has an accent.
She has a Kenyan accent, which many Somalis do, because they grew up in Kenya as well too. So.
Right. But I know you say that you're working on some other things, so we'll be looking forward to seeing what else you've got coming.
Thank you. You will know it. I have your email, so I will bother you.
Oh yes, we'll definitely stay in touch and connected on social media. For those of you who have maybe not been paying attention, all of her social media is scrolling at the bottom, so you can stay in touch with Shugri to see what she's got going on. I know that on your website you do periodically do some blog posts as well. So
yeah, and I'm working on it. There is a page actually. If Shugri Said, the page used to have storyteller Shugri Said, but I made it Shugri Said, and then they're all trying to mix together. But the page is the best place. And then if shugrisaid.com is a place where I put free stories, and actually all of the stories that didn't make it to the book may end up there. So that's a good place to sign up for it too.
Well, that sounds great. Well, once again, I thank you so much for being here. I have enjoyed talking to you, my cousin from across the pond.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I have enjoyed our evening. Thank you.
Yes, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you to everyone who's been here with us live. And if you didn't catch it live, catch it in the replay, drop that as a replay when you get a chance to watch it. I definitely would hope that you would listen and learn, because you're going to learn some things, and then grab the book. And one last thing before I go, I do want to let you know about my next person. I have a birthday coming up at the end of the month, so I'm going to be busy for a couple of weeks.
Happy early birthday, girl.
I'm going to be busy for a couple of weeks, but the next book is going to be Call Baby. This is a copy of it. Morgan Jerkins' Call Baby will be our next book.
I got to check that out.
Yes, and we will be talking to Morgan on Monday, October the 4th. So that'll be the next time that you will see me in this platform. But in the meantime, betwixt and between, I hope that everyone, stay safe, stay well, take good care of yourselves, do the right things. You know what the right things are. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Compassion. Right, absolutely.
Give somebody water, buy a homeless a food,
Right.
Always compassionate. Whenever a good thing happens to you, compassion.
Absolutely. So everyone, you all have a good evening, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, Shugri. I appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.